The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out like a vast bowl carved from living crystal. Light from 3 distant suns filtered through the transparent ceiling, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates from 47 spacefaring civilizations. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others sat on specially designed platforms that matched their unique body shapes. A few existed only as holographic projections, their true forms too large or too strange to attend in person. Ambassador Catherine Cole stood alone on the petitioner's platform at the center of this grand assembly. She was a woman of 53 years, with gray streaking her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. Her formal uniform was crisp and perfect, the blue and silver of Earth's diplomatic corps. Behind her, a small group of human aides waited in respectful silence. Catherine had made this journey many times before. The trip from Earth to Nexara Prime took 12 hours through hyperspace, and she had spent most of those hours preparing her speech. She knew every word by heart. She also knew, deep in her bones, that it would not matter. High Arbiter Vexathri presided over the council from an elevated throne of polished black stone. He was Kethrani, an insectoid species that had ruled 100 worlds for 10,000 years. His body was covered in hard plates of dark red chitin, and his compound eyes reflected Catherine's image 1,000 times over. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together in sharp, precise movements. The humans request elevation to Tier 2 status within the Accord, Vexathri announced. His voice carried easily through the chamber's perfect acoustics. This is their 4th such petition in 20 years. Laughter filled the chamber. It came in many forms. The Kethrani clicked their mandibles. The serpentine Thixians hissed with amusement. The Luminari, beings of pure light trapped in crystalline bodies, flickered in patterns that meant mockery. The sound washed over Catherine like a wave of contempt. She waited for silence before speaking. Distinguished members of the Council, she began. Earth has been a member of the Galactic Accord for 60 years. In that time, we have honored every treaty placed before us. We have paid our tribute without delay. We have restricted our expansion to the zones assigned to us. We have followed every regulation, no matter how strict, no matter how unfair. Unfair? The word came from Delegate Sora, of the Luminari Collective. She was beautiful in an alien way. Her body a sculpture of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. That light now flickered red with annoyance. You speak of unfairness, human? Your species was burning fossil fuels and fighting tribal wars when my ancestors mapped the quantum foundations of reality. You should be grateful we allow you among us at all. Catherine kept her face calm. She had heard such words many times before. I meant no offense, she said carefully. I simply wish to point out that humanity has earned consideration. We have proven ourselves reliable partners. Our technology has advanced. Our population has grown. We have established 17 colony worlds, all within legal boundaries. We ask only for the recognition that our progress deserves. High Arbiter Vexathri leaned forward on his throne. His compound eyes seemed to bore into Catherine's soul. Your progress, he said slowly, is precisely what concerns this council. 17 colony worlds in 60 years. No other Tier 3 civilization has ever expanded so quickly. Your population has grown from 8 billion to 32 billion. Your industrial output has increased by a factor of 15. He paused. Some might call this impressive. Others might call it dangerous. We have followed the rules, Catherine repeated. You have followed the letter of the rules. Delegate Thren of the Mercantile Alliance cut in. He was a Vordani, a stocky humanoid with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. But the spirit? Your species breeds like insects. You spread like a disease. Every year, you push against the boundaries we have set. Every year, you ask for more. Catherine felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger would not help her here. We are a young species, she said. We are ambitious. We do not see this as a flaw. We see it as strength. It is not your place to decide what is strength and what is weakness. Vexathri's voice was cold. The council has reviewed your petition. Earth will remain at Tier 3 status. This decision is final. Catherine had expected this. She was prepared for this. What came next? She was not prepared for. Furthermore, the High Arbiter continued. The Council has determined that additional restrictions are necessary. Effective immediately, human expansion is frozen. No new colonies will be established. No new mining operations will be permitted outside your current holdings. Your fleet will be reduced by 40% to ensure compliance. For a moment, Catherine could not speak. The words hit her like physical blows. 40% of their fleet. No new colonies. They were not just denying humanity advancement. They were strangling them. On what grounds? She finally managed to ask. On the grounds that we say so. Vex Thari rose from his throne. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, and he looked down at Catherine like she was an insect beneath his notice. You are a young species, ambassador. Barely out of your cradle. You do not understand the dangers of unchecked growth. You do not understand the responsibilities of power. Learn your place, or we will teach it to you. The Council voted. The result was unanimous. 47 species, 47 votes against humanity. Catherine stood frozen on the platform as the delegates began to file out of the chamber. Some did not even bother to look at her. Others glanced her way with expressions of pity or contempt. Delegate Sora paused beside her, her crystalline body pulsing with cold blue light. Do not take it personally, human, she said. Your species is simply not ready. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will understand. Then she was gone, and Catherine was alone with her aides in the vast empty chamber. She activated her secure communication device with trembling fingers. The connection to Earth was instantaneous. Routed through a network of quantum relays that humanity had helped build, but was not allowed to fully use. Secretary of Defense Marcus Webb answered immediately. His face appeared as a small hologram above her wrist. He was a heavy-set man with a shaved head and tired eyes. I watched the whole thing, he said. How bad do you feel? Like I've been kicked in the stomach, Catherine admitted. They're not just keeping us down, Marcus. They're actively trying to weaken us. 40% fleet reduction, expansion freeze. They're afraid of us. Good, Marcus said. There was something in his voice that made Catherine pause, something hard and cold. Come home, Catherine. The president is calling an emergency session. It's time. Time for what? Marcus Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Time to show them what humanity really is. Time to show them what we've been hiding for 60 years. The communication ended, and Catherine Cole stood alone in the crystal chamber, where humanity had just been humiliated for the 4th time. But something had changed. For the first time in her career, she felt not despair, but anticipation. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. The galaxy was wrong. The United Earth Parliament building in Geneva stood as a monument to human unity. It had been built 80 years ago, after the first contact with alien life convinced humanity that their petty differences no longer mattered. The building was a massive dome of white stone and glass, surrounded by gardens where representatives from every nation on Earth could walk and talk in peace. But today, there was no peace. President Daniel Reyes stood at the podium in the central chamber, looking out at the faces of humanity's leaders. Every seat was filled. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, admirals, scientists, and spies. The doors had been sealed. Armed guards stood at every entrance. The electromagnetic shielding was active, blocking any signal from entering or leaving the building. Daniel Reyes was 61 years old. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years before entering politics. He had seen combat against pirates in the asteroid belt. He had negotiated trade deals with alien merchants who saw humans as little more than clever animals. He had spent his entire adult life watching humanity bow and scrape before species that looked down on them with contempt. Today, that would end. What I am about to tell you, he began, his voice steady and clear, has been classified at the highest level for 60 years. Only a handful of people in each generation have known the full truth. Presidents, defense secretaries, a few key military commanders. Today, that circle expands to include everyone in this room. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the assembly. 60 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the Galactic Council, our leaders faced a choice. The aliens offered us membership in their accord, but at a price. We would be classified as a Tier 3 civilization. We would pay tribute. We would accept limits on our expansion and our military. We would, in short, become servants, pretending to be partners. Our leaders agreed to these terms, but they did not accept them. Do you understand the difference? Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. President Reyes nodded to Admiral Patricia Hayes, Chief of Naval Operations. She was a tall woman, with silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She stepped forward and activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. This, she said, is what the Galactic Council believes is the current state of Earth's military. The display showed a modest fleet, 300 combat vessels of various sizes, mostly light cruisers and patrol ships. A handful of larger battleships, all of them built to Council-approved specifications. It was a respectable force for a minor civilization, but nothing that would concern the great powers of the galaxy. Now, Admiral Hayes continued, let me show you the truth. The display changed. The modest fleet disappeared, replaced by something that made several representatives gasp out loud. Shipyards, hundreds of them. Hidden in the asteroid belt, carved into the moons of Jupiter, buried beneath the frozen oceans of Europa, concealed in the mountains of Mars, and emerging from those shipyards, thousands of vessels, battle cruisers bristling with weapons, aircraft carriers that could deploy entire fighter wings, dreadnoughts the size of small cities, armed with weapons that the galaxy had never seen. 3,200 combat vessels, Admiral Hayes said, plus support ships, supply vessels, and troop transports. This is the real Earth Defense Force. The one we've been building in secret for 6 decades. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions. Some stood up from their seats in shock. Others sat frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. President Reyes raised his hand for silence. I understand your confusion, he said. Let me explain how this was possible. He began to pace as he spoke, his voice taking on the tone of a teacher explaining a simple lesson. When we first joined the Council, we quickly realized that they would never accept us as equals. The older species see younger ones as threats to be controlled, not partners to be respected. They would monitor our development, limit our growth, and keep us weak. Forever. So our leaders made a decision. They would play the game. They would smile and bow and pay the tribute. They would show the Council exactly what it expected to see. Primitive humans, struggling to catch up. Grateful natives happy to have a place at the table. A minor species that knew its place. Meanwhile, in secret we would build. Director Samuel Grant of Earth Intelligence stepped forward. He was a thin man with gray hair and glasses that seemed too old-fashioned for the age of quantum computing. But his eyes were sharp and cold. The tribute we paid to the Council included samples of our technology, he said. They believed they were monitoring our development. They saw our research, our designs, our prototypes. What they did not know was that everything we showed them was obsolete. Old designs, failed experiments, technology we had already moved beyond. Our real research continued in black sites across the solar system and beyond. Facilities that don't appear on any Council-approved maps. Scientists who officially work on mundane projects, but actually push the boundaries of physics in hidden laboratories. For 60 years, we have been developing weapons, engines, shields, and systems that the galaxy has never seen. A representative from the Asian Federation raised her hand. The colony worlds, she said. The Council says we have 17. How many do we really have? President Reyes smiled grimly. 43. 26 of them completely unknown to the Council. Hidden in systems they've never surveyed, terraformed in secret. Populated by colonists who officially died in accidents or disappeared on long-range survey missions. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the deception became clear. For 60 years, President Reyes continued, Millions of people have worked on this project. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, colonists. Most of them never knew the full picture. They knew only their small piece of the puzzle. But together, they built something remarkable. They built humanity's true future. He returned to the podium and gripped its edges with both hands. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council voted to strangle us. They want to reduce our fleet by 40%. They want to freeze our expansion forever. They want to keep us small and weak and afraid. I am asking this Parliament to authorize Protocol Prometheus. The name meant nothing to most of the representatives, but those who understood it grew pale. Protocol Prometheus, President Reyes explained, is the contingency plan we have prepared for this moment. At midnight tonight, Earth will withdraw from every treaty, every accord, every agreement with the Galactic Council, every single one. We will reveal our true military strength. We will stake our claim to the territories we have secretly developed, and we will demand the respect that we have earned. Mr. President, said a representative from South America, his voice shaking, this could mean war with the entire galaxy. Yes, Reyes agreed. It could. That is why I am asking for a vote. This decision is too important for one person to make. It must be made by all of humanity. Through you, their representatives. He looked out at the assembly, meeting their eyes one by one. We have been slaves pretending to be free. Today, we can become truly free. But freedom has a price. Are we willing to pay it? The debate lasted 4 hours. Representatives argued, shouted, pleaded, and wept. Some spoke of the risks of war. Others spoke of the shame of continued submission. Stories were shared of human colonists mistreated by alien overlords, of tribute ships carrying away the wealth of Earth, of young humans raised to believe they were inferior to species that had simply been born on older worlds. When the vote was finally called, it was unanimous. Protocol Prometheus was approved. At midnight, everything would change. High Arbiter Vex Thari was enjoying his evening meal when the first reports came in. His private chambers in the council palace were luxurious beyond anything a human could imagine. Walls of living crystal that shifted color with his mood, furniture grown from organic compounds that molded itself to his body, a window that looked out over the endless cityscape of Nexera Prime, where billions of beings from dozens of species lived and worked under the watchful eye of the council. He had just selected a particularly juicy piece of raw meat from his plate when his communications officer burst through the door without announcement. Vex's Thari's mandibles clicked in anger. You forget yourself, Lieutenant. The punishment for entering my chambers uninvited is death. The young Kathrani officer fell to his knees, his chitin plates rattling with fear. Forgive me, High Arbiter. But you must see this. Something is happening. Something unprecedented. Vex Thari considered killing the officer anyway, just to maintain discipline, but something in the young male's voice gave him pause. It was not just fear. It was terror. Show me. The officer activated a portable display, and Vex Thari found himself looking at a human woman, Ambassador Catherine Cole. She was broadcasting on every frequency the council monitored, her image appearing on screens across the galaxy. To the Galactic Council and all member species, Cole said. Her voice was calm and measured, but there was steel beneath the softness. As of this moment, the United Earth Government withdraws from the Nexara Accords, the Territorial Limitation Treaty, the Fleet Restriction Agreement, and all associated protocols. Vex Thari's meal forgotten, he leaned closer to the display. Effective immediately, Cole continued. All tribute payments are suspended permanently. All council oversight of human space is rejected. The inspection stations in our territory have been given 1 hour to evacuate before they are removed by force. Any vessel entering human-controlled space without explicit permission will be considered hostile and will be dealt with accordingly. She's bluffing, Vex Thari said, but his voice lacked conviction. They wouldn't dare. Their fleet is nothing compared to ours. High Arbiter, his officer said. There is more. Our sensor stations are detecting massive energy signatures across human space. Signatures that weren't there before. He manipulated the display, and suddenly, Vexthari was looking at a tactical map of the galaxy. Human space was marked in blue, a small region near the galactic rim that the Council had generously allowed them to occupy. But now, red dots were appearing everywhere within that blue zone. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. Ships, the officer said. Capital ships. They're emerging from hidden locations all across human territory. Places we had no record of. Shipyards concealed inside asteroids. Bases hidden beneath the surfaces of moons. Entire fleets that we never knew existed. Vexthari stared at the display in disbelief. How is this possible? Our inspectors have been monitoring human development for 60 years. I don't know, High Arbiter. But the preliminary count suggests over 3,000 combat vessels. And some of them. The officer's voice trailed off. Some of them what? Some of them are larger than anything in our own fleet. We're detecting energy signatures consistent with weapons we've never seen before. Power outputs that exceed our theoretical models. Vexthari's communication device began to ring. Then another. Then another. Within moments, a dozen priority messages were demanding his attention. He answered the first one. It was the Luminari Collective's military commander, his crystalline face flickering with barely contained panic. High Arbiter, human battle groups have taken position near our border stations. They're not attacking, but they're not responding to our communications either. They're just sitting there, pointing their weapons at our facilities. The second call was from the Thixian Empire. Same story. Human ships had appeared near their primary shipyard. A dreadnought of impossible size, leading a formation of smaller vessels. The third call was from the Mercantile Alliance. The fourth from the Valdrani Consortium. The fifth from the Kethrani's own border command. Every major power in the Council was reporting the same thing. Human vessels had appeared at strategic locations across the galaxy, positioning themselves near critical infrastructure without firing a shot. They were not attacking. They did not need to. The message was perfectly clear. In the hours that followed, Vexthari watched the carefully constructed order of the galaxy begin to crack. Council species that had stood united for thousands of years now argued and blamed each other. The Luminari demanded military action. The Thixians counseled patience. The Mercantile Alliance, always pragmatic, began quietly reaching out to human diplomats to discuss new trade arrangements. Reports flooded in from across human space. The inspection stations had been evacuated just before the deadline. Moments later, human ships had reduced them to rubble. Tribute convoys that had been en route to Council worlds were turned back at gunpoint. Human colony worlds that had accepted Council governors suddenly announced that those governors had been peacefully removed and were being sent home. 60 years of careful control, of treaties and restrictions and oversight, were being dismantled in a single night, and there was nothing the Council could do about it. In his private chambers, Vexthari sat alone in the darkness, watching the reports scroll past on his display. He had ruled the Council for 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, negotiated treaties, and guided the galaxy through a dozen crises. He had always believed that he understood power. Now he realized that he had never truly understood it at all. The humans had smiled and bowed and paid their tribute. They had accepted every restriction, every limitation, every humiliation. They had played the role of grateful servants for 60 years, and the Council had believed every moment of it. But it had all been a performance. A mask worn to hide the truth. While the Council watched and laughed and congratulated itself on keeping the young species in its place, the humans had been building, planning, preparing for this moment. Vexthari remembered the words he had spoken to Ambassador Cole just days ago. Learn your place, or we will teach it to you. The humans had learned their place. They had simply chosen a different one than the Council had assigned them. As the first light of dawn broke over Nexara Prime, emergency alerts began to sound across the planet. The Galactic Council was being summoned to an immediate session. Decisions had to be made, responses had to be coordinated, but Vexthari already knew what the outcome would be. The Council could threaten and bluster and make demands, but it could not change the fundamental reality that had been revealed this night. Humanity was no longer a minor species to be managed and controlled. Humanity was a power in its own right, and the galaxy would have to learn to deal with that fact, or pay the price for refusing to do so. The High Arbiter rose from his seat and prepared to face the most difficult day of his long life. Somewhere, he was certain, human diplomats were preparing as well. They would come to the council, not as supplicants begging for scraps of recognition, but as equals demanding their due. And this time, the council would have no choice but to listen. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest in living memory. Representatives had arrived from every corner of the galaxy, summoned by urgent messages that spoke of crisis and catastrophe. The Great Crystal Chamber was packed beyond capacity, with hundreds of delegates forced to observe through holographic projections. The mood was chaos. They have made fools of us all. Delegate Sora of the Luminary Collective stood at the center of the chamber, her crystalline body blazing with angry red light. 60 years of lies, 60 years of deception, and we saw nothing, perhaps because you were too busy looking down your nose at them to actually watch, muttered Delegate Thren of the Mercantile Alliance. The blue-skinned Vordani had always been more practical than his colleagues. The humans told us what we wanted to hear, and we never questioned it. This is not the time for blame, High Arbiter Vexthari said from his throne. His voice was tired, his compound eyes dull. He had not slept since the revelations began. We must decide how to respond. There is only one response, Sora declared. We attack. We gather our fleets and we crush this rebellion before it can spread. We burn their hidden shipyards, destroy their secret colonies, and teach them the price of defying the Council. With what forces? The quiet voice came from the back of the chamber. Elder Korith of the Valdrani Consortium rose slowly from his seat. He was ancient even by the standards of long-lived species, his gray-scaled skin wrinkled with 5 centuries of age. When he spoke, others listened. The combined fleet of the Council numbers approximately 4,000 vessels, Korith said, walking slowly toward the center of the chamber. The humans have revealed 3,000, and I suspect that is not their full strength. They have positioned themselves at every strategic choke point in the region. Our shipyards, our supply lines, our communication hubs, all covered by their weapons. You Council surrender? Sora's light flickered with contempt. I counsel wisdom, Korith replied. If we attack, we may win. But the cost would be enormous. Thousands of ships destroyed on both sides. Billions of lives lost. Worlds reduced to rubble. And for what? To punish a species for the crime of refusing to be our slaves? They violated our treaties. Treaties we imposed on them by force. Treaties they never truly agreed to. Treaties they signed because the alternative was destruction. Korith shook his ancient head. We treated them as children to be managed. We are now learning that they were never children at all. Before Sora could respond, a new voice cut through the chamber. I believe that's what I'm here for. Every head turned toward the main entrance. Ambassador Catherine Cole walked into the chamber with a confidence she had never shown before. Gone was the careful diplomat who measured every word. In her place was a woman who knew exactly how much power she represented. She was flanked by 2 officers in unfamiliar uniforms, dark blue with silver trim, decorated with medals and insignia that no Council species recognized. These were not the humble representatives of a minor civilization. These were the officers of a major military power, and they carried themselves accordingly. Catherine walked to the petitioner's platform at the center of the chamber. The same platform where she had been humiliated just days ago. But everything was different now. The United Earth government has a simple message, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics. We do not want war. We have never wanted war. What we wanted was respect. What we wanted was equality. What we wanted was the simple acknowledgement that we are not children to be managed, but a civilization in our own right. You could have asked for these things through proper channels, Vexthari said. We did ask. For 60 years we asked. And every time, we were laughed at, insulted, told to know our place. Catherine's eyes were hard. You offered us two choices: accept permanent subjugation or face destruction. So we created a third choice. We made ourselves strong enough that you could no longer destroy us without destroying yourselves. And now? Elder Korith asked softly. What do you want now? Catherine reached into her uniform and produced a small data chip. She placed it on the podium before her. This contains our terms for a new relationship between humanity and the Council. They are simple and fair. First, equal status. Humanity will no longer be classified as a Tier 3 civilization. The tier system itself will be abolished. All species will be treated as equals under Council law. Second, no restrictions on expansion. Humanity will be free to settle any unclaimed space we wish, just like any other species. Our territorial claims, including the colonies we have established in secret, will be recognized. Third, fair representation. Humanity will have a permanent seat on all Council governing bodies, with voting power equal to any other major civilization. And fourth, Catherine paused. A formal apology, broadcast to every species in the Accord, acknowledging 60 years of unjust treatment, of tribute extracted under threat of force, of opportunities denied and potential suppressed. An apology? Sora's voice was incredulous, her light flickering between red and purple. You expect us to apologize to you? Yes, Catherine said simply. I do. Because you owe us one. 60 years of treating us like servants. 60 years of taking our wealth and our labor, while telling us we should be grateful for the privilege. 60 years of watching our people struggle while you grew fat on our tribute. She shook her head. You asked us to learn our place. We learned it. We just refused to accept the place you chose for us. The chamber erupted in argument. Delegates shouted at each other, at Catherine, at the air itself. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiation. A few quietly began to leave, already planning to make their own deals with humanity before their rivals could. Through it all, Catherine stood calmly at the podium, waiting. Finally, Elder Korith raised his hand for silence. His ancient voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. He turned to face Catherine directly. Ambassador Cole, what happens if we refuse your terms? Then we go our separate ways, Catherine replied. Humanity will withdraw from Council space entirely. We will establish our own sphere of influence, defend our own borders, and have no further dealings with any species that rejects our friendship. And our territorial claims near your borders? No longer recognized. The buffer zones you established are void. Human space now extends to the limits we have chosen for ourselves. Any attempt to contest those limits will be met with force. Korith nodded slowly. And if we accept your terms? What guarantee do we have that humanity will not use its new power to conquer us all? Catherine's expression softened slightly. You have our word. I know that may not mean much to you, but it means everything to us. Humanity has never wanted to rule the galaxy. We simply wanted to be part of it, as equals, as partners, as friends, if that is possible. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had once looked down on her with contempt. We could have struck without warning, she said. We could have launched attacks on your shipyards, your colonies, your homeworlds. Our positioning would have allowed us to cripple every major power in the Council within hours. We chose not to, because that is not who we are. We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. We are simply a species that refuses to be slaves. Accept our terms, and we can build something better together. Refuse them, and we will go our own way. The choice is yours. She turned and walked toward the exit, her officers falling in step beside her. You have 24 hours to decide. The doors closed behind her, and the Galactic Council was left alone, with the weight of history pressing down upon them. For the first time in 10,000 years, they faced a choice that could not be made from a position of absolute strength. They would have to treat another species as equals, or face the consequences of refusing to do so. 6 months had passed since the night when everything changed. Ambassador Catherine Cole stood in the great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council, but she barely recognized it. The elevated throne where High Arbiter Vexthari had once sat in judgment over lesser species was gone. In its place was a circular table where representatives of all civilizations sat as equals. The petitioner's platform, where Catherine had once stood alone, begging for scraps of recognition, had been removed entirely. The chamber was filled with delegates from across the galaxy, but the mood was different now. There was still tension, still suspicion, still the lingering resentment of old powers forced to share their status with newcomers. But there was also something else, something that felt like the first fragile shoots of hope. The Treaty of Soul had been signed 3 months ago. Every major power in the galaxy had added their seal to the document, some willingly and some with great reluctance. The tier system that had defined galactic civilization for thousands of years was officially abolished. In its place was a new framework of mutual cooperation, where all species were recognized as equals, regardless of how long they had traveled among the stars. Humanity had a permanent seat on the newly formed Galactic Assembly. More than that, humans had been appointed to positions throughout the Council bureaucracy. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists. Human diplomats negotiated treaties that affected billions of beings. Human traders moved through markets that had once been closed to them. It was not perfect. Old prejudices did not disappear overnight. There were still those who muttered about the humans who had tricked their way to power, who had lied and deceived their way to equality. There were still incidents of discrimination, of hostility, of violence against human colonists in isolated regions. But things were changing. Slowly, painfully, inevitably. The galaxy was learning to accept a new reality. President Daniel Reyes had given the closing address at the treaty signing ceremony. His words had been broadcast to trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "We never wanted supremacy," he had said. "We simply refused to accept subjugation. Let this be the beginning of a true partnership among equals. Let this be the dawn of a new era, where species are judged not by how old they are or how powerful they seem, but by what they contribute to the common good of all sentient life." Now, months later, Catherine stood at the window of her new office in the Council Palace, watching ships from dozens of civilizations move through the skies of Nexara Prime, human vessels among them. Not hidden anymore, not pretending to be less than they were, flying openly, proudly, as equals. A remarkable view. Catherine turned to find Elder Korath standing behind her. The ancient Valdrani had become something of an ally in recent months. One of the few council members who had supported humanity's demands from the beginning. He moved slowly, his age weighing heavily on him, but his eyes were still sharp. "It still doesn't feel real sometimes," Catherine admitted. 60 years of playing a role. 60 years of bowing and scraping and pretending to be grateful for crumbs. And now, she gestured at the window. "Now we're here. Now you are here," Korath agreed. He came to stand beside her, his gray-scaled hands clasped behind his back. "I have lived for 5 centuries. Ambassador. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves with their own weapons, and others achieve greatness beyond imagination. But I have never seen anything quite like what your people have done." "You mean the deception. I mean the patience." Korath shook his ancient head. 60 years. 3 generations of your short-lived species, working toward a goal that most of them would never live to see. Millions of people keeping a secret that could have been exposed at any moment. Do you have any idea how remarkable that is? Remarkable. Catherine nodded slowly. It wasn't easy. There were times when people wanted to give up. Times when the younger generation asked why they should keep paying tribute to species that despised them. Times when military commanders wanted to use our hidden strength to strike first. But you held together. We held together. Because we believed in something larger than ourselves. Because we knew that our children and grandchildren deserved better than slavery. Because... She paused, searching for the right words. Because humanity has always been stubborn. We don't give up, even when we should. Even when it would be easier to accept defeat. Korath was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "The galaxy is entering a new era, Ambassador. The old powers have been humbled. The rules that governed us for millennia are being rewritten. Many of my colleagues are afraid. They look at humanity's rise and they see a threat. They wonder if you will be content with equality, or if you will eventually seek domination. Catherine met his eyes steadily. What do you think? I think that you have already shown remarkable restraint. You could have destroyed us. Your positioning in those first hours gave you the advantage to cripple every major power in the Council. Instead, you offered peace. You asked for equality, not supremacy. That speaks well of your species. We meant what we said. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be part of it. We don't want to be part of it. For your sake, and for all our sakes, I hope that remains true. Korath turned toward the door, then paused. You know, in all my centuries, I have never seen a species execute such a long and perfect deception. 60 years of patience. Millions of people keeping faith with a plan they could not fully understand. Remarkable. We prefer to think of it as planning. Indeed. The old alien's expression was unreadable. Sleep well, Ambassador. The universe has learned a valuable lesson today. What lesson is that? Korath smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien face but carried unmistakable warmth. Never belittle a species that learned to split the atom before it learned to leave its own world. Such creatures are not to be underestimated. He left her alone with the stars. Catherine remained at the window long after he was gone. She thought about all the people who had made this moment possible. The leaders who had first conceived the plan, knowing they would never see its completion. The scientists who had worked in hidden laboratories, advancing human technology while pretending to struggle with obsolete designs. The colonists who had built new worlds in secret, raising their children to believe in a future they could not yet see. She thought about her own parents, who had served in the diplomatic corps before her. They had known the truth. They had spent their lives maintaining the mask, playing the role of humble servants while knowing what humanity truly was. They had died before the revelation. But Catherine liked to think they would be proud. The stars outside her window seemed brighter now. Not because anything had changed in the universe, but because humanity's place in it had finally been recognized. They had not been given that place. They had not earned it through violence or conquest. They had earned it through patience, through sacrifice, through the simple refusal to accept that they were less than anyone else. The galaxy had tried to teach humanity its place, but humanity had always been a difficult student. Now, finally, the lesson was complete. But it was not the lesson the Council had intended. Catherine Cole smiled and turned away from the window. There was work to be done. A new era was beginning. And humanity had a role to play in shaping it, not the role assigned to them by others. The role they had chosen for themselves, and that made all the difference.